You guys are so legit over here.
Okay.
Gosh, I'm already crying, guys.
Awesome.
This is gonna be a mess.
You're fine. And I got my second one out, so then you have yours there too, in case. All right, are we ready? Okay. Welcome back, everybody, to the Self-Love series with me, Teisina, where our goal of this show is to spread and share self-love through others and their stories. Today, we are talking about a subject that I know a lot can relate to. Statistics in 2018 showed that nearly 900,000 women experience postpartum depression. And that is just the amount that went diagnosed. That's not including those that weren't diagnosed and didn't open up about what they were going through. So our hope of this episode in sharing with our guests today is that somebody going through it that maybe hasn't reached out for help, is going through it alone, feels that strength and that push to get the help that they need and to start on their road to recovery and healing. So we hope you enjoyed today's episode. I am joined today by two amazing women. We have Tina and Candace here. Thank you, ladies, for coming.
Thank you.
And so just starting off with our intro is any good news. So we'll just start with that. If either of you have any good news that's happened lately or that's coming up and you're excited about.
My good news is my daughter is coming home from Hawaii. I've been looking forward to that for a long time since she left. And she's been gone for a month, so she'll be home in a couple days. And I'm really excited.
Tell them how old she is.
She is 19 months.
19 months, and this is her first trip away.
Yeah.
So.
And mine.
She's the cutest, right? You're separated.
Yeah.
Yeah. So excited for that. What about you, Tina?
I'm just excited for New Year's.
Yes.
I feel like it's always a new start.
For sure.
But yeah, that's my good news. I'm excited for new beginnings.
Yeah.
With the new year.
I love that. Awesome. And then just our next part is something that you love about yourself.
I love that I'm very easygoing. Mm-hmm. Whatever is happening, I'm down for it.
Yes.
I don't know. Physicals? Something physical?
Yes. I like to do both.
Oh, okay.
Because they get us out of our comfort zone.
So easygoing, and I like my feet. I think I have cute feet.
I love that.
That's awesome.
Because a lot of women and girls, especially girls, I know in the Young Women's, they were so paranoid about their feet being out.
I love that.
So that is a good thing.
I'm gonna just take my socks off.
Take it off. And just show the camera and everything.
Let's get a close up and zoom in.
Now you have to really show us because you said.
I don't have a pedicure, but they're cute.
I believe it.
That's awesome. I love that. That's a new one. What about you?
I love, there's a quote that I really try and live by, and it's to never let a generous thought go untold. And I really try and live by that. That's something that whenever I see, whether it be a smile or I appreciate you or a wave, I feel like it really makes a difference for people who are struggling, and that's something that I try and do more of.
Love that.
And physically, I love my eyes.
Yeah.
That's just, I've always loved my eyes. I love them more on my kids,
Mm-hmm.
but I like my eyes.
That's awesome. Well, awesome. Thank you, ladies. Love that you were both able to bring that up. And I love what you brought up, because I was actually thinking that before you guys were coming as I was getting ready, of a lot of times where it feels like, especially when you it can sometimes get monotonous when you do the same things over and over, and it can start to feel like your efforts go unnoticed, even though a lot of the times you're doing your best and giving your all, but you feel like that goes unseen sometimes. And I think that it's not that other people around you aren't appreciative, but I think they are, but a lot of people don't think that verbalizing it will make a big difference. Mm-hmm. And it does. It's the simplest thing to be told, hey, thank you for doing this, something specific. And I think that makes the biggest difference, just of someone to feel seen and appreciated
Yeah, I
and
agree.
just being them, living and doing what they're doing. So I love that you brought that up. And that was the Light the World challenge yesterday too. So I love that. So our next question is, now getting into it, is what does self-love mean to you ladies, and what has your journey through it been like, as well as dealing with postpartum depression and postpartum anxiety?
Self-love to me is just having that healthy relationship with yourself, doing things that you need to do or want to do to make you feel better or make you feel loved by yourself. So if it's working out, if it's going shopping, if it's just sleeping, if it's just watching TV, there's just so many different forms of that self-love, like consciously thinking of things that make you feel good about yourself and just love yourself. Like, if for me it's eyelash extensions, and it's like, it makes me feel good and it gives me that confidence that I love to feel, and not feeling so negative or like so down on myself because I look like crap all the time because I'm busy taking care of other little people and my husband and my family. So that's self-love to me.
Awesome.
I love that. For me, I agree with a lot of what Candace said. Self-awareness, self-acceptance, being okay with, or being happy with who you are. I think that we lose sight, especially as mothers, we kind of lose sight of who we are in parenting our children. And I think it's just grasping hold of all the special gifts that we possess and how powerful they can be. And for me, I love to exercise. That's kind of my way of moving my body and working through my feelings, and also just thanking my body for all that it's done for me. I think there's so much that goes into self-love.
Right.
A lot of it is forgiveness, of being okay with not doing these specific things that you had a list of to-do things, and being okay with that, and just knowing that the list will get done regardless. And yeah, I think that's my,
I love that. I agree with both.
So my journey with self-love is a really long and hard journey, and it's still continuing today. And with postpartum depression, it was really hard to come to that conclusion, not conclusion, but to that, I guess, diagnosis of this whole journey. So recently, I had twins. They're 3 months now, boy, girl. And I had a really hard pregnancy. Emotionally hard, physically hard, just really hard. And I felt this really ungrateful and dark feelings when I was pregnant. Just not being grateful for being pregnant, because I was always complaining about how much I was in pain, always complaining about not being able to do the things that I used to do, and not feeling attractive, just so many negative things that I feel like a lot of pregnant women feel sometimes when they go through pregnancy. And yeah, so at the end of my pregnancy, I was 37 weeks, so I was full term with twins. And my doctor suggested that we do a cesarean because my daughter was still right side up, so her feet were down, and my son was head down. So he said a cesarean because there would be complications if I was to give birth vaginally. The second baby will have difficulties coming out because there's more chances of the umbilical cord being wrapped around and just all of that thing. So I said, okay, that's fine. Like whatever's safe for my babies and me. So we did the cesarean, and during that whole process, I just saw so many people coming in and out of the OR room. Like, I think at one point there was about 14 people in that whole room. And I was just kind of wondering what was going on. No one was telling me anything. And so when my son came out, I heard him cry. So I was like, okay, relieved, he's fine. And then when the second baby came out, everyone kind of went quiet, and I just saw like a whole rush of people and monitors going off, and I just like panicked. And after all of that was done, they sewed me up, put me on the hospital bed, and just gave me my son. And they didn't tell me what was wrong with my daughter. So I went to a separate room, and then they finally told me that they were going to take her up to a special care unit because she needed oxygen and just a little more care. So being in the hospital without my daughter and just my son, I had a really hard recovery. I was really weak. I couldn't stand. I couldn't bathe myself. So it was day 3, and I would be going home the next day, and I couldn't even stand or walk to see my daughter who was upstairs. I couldn't stand or walk to bathe myself. Like, my husband had to like physically help me. And I remember feeling like embarrassed and ashamed and weak because I wasn't able to do those things on my own. And like, I'm not one to really ask for help. I feel like as mothers, it's like we are conditioned to be strong and to just push through and just do it on your own. And so I felt embarrassed, and I would like look in the mirror and I would just see like discoloration in my stomach and like a lot of skin, and it still looked like I was pregnant, and it was like really hard for me. So after I was able to see her, I felt guilt. Like, what did I do? What could I have done while I was pregnant to make sure that she was healthy when she was born? Guilt that I was with my son more and she was upstairs and I couldn't even see her. And we had to leave the hospital without her. So feeling guilty that she was there and I was home. Feeling guilt that my firstborn was at home and I was busy with the other 2. And my mom was there to help. And after she had left, so she was there for about 3 weeks, helping me clean, with meals, with the twins, with my oldest daughter. So when my daughter came home, my mom went back to Hawaii, and I had to take care, be a mom, I guess, to my 3 babies by myself. And I remember feeling like super overwhelmed and just inadequate to be a mom just because I couldn't do it by myself. I noticed really dark and negative feelings again, to the point where they were scary. And I felt shameful that I felt those things, because I was like, here I am with these 2 beautiful babies and a 18-month-old. And I'm sad about it. I'm really sad. Like, I feel ungrateful. Like, I don't feel connected to them. I don't feel connected to myself. And I just kept thinking, like, here I am with 3 babies, and there are women out there who are dying to have what I have. And I can't even love them the way I want to love them. So the feelings that I was having, they just kept getting harder to deal with, harder to cope with on my own. You know, some women, they deal with these things differently. I know some women, like if they work out, and some women confide in others, like their sister or mom. And I tried everything. I tried everything that I could do. So I tried working out again, but I would like see myself and be disgusted with myself. I would try to confide in someone, but I just felt like they didn't understand what I was going through. And I was too scared to tell my husband because I didn't want him to think, I didn't want him to be worried, and I didn't want him to be like, well, this is not what I signed up for when I married her. Like, this is a completely different person from who I married. So there was one day where it was probably my lowest that I felt. It was really dark and scary, and I was like really hysterical. So I called my husband and I just told him, like, I don't know what to do. I need help. And that was really hard for me to admit, but I knew that I needed help. Like, I knew that this demon that I was fighting could have taken me away from all of that. So he came home. He was going to work, so he came home and kind of just talked me through like options and like what we can do or how I'm feeling. And he's like, I think you need to go talk to your doctor. So I did, and my doctor, who has actually been like a close source for our family, he's like really personable to us, so we feel really comfortable talking to him about these things. So he suggested that I start on medication and that I go to therapy. And I was ashamed. I was like, people like me don't go to therapy, is what I thought. People like me don't take medication. Like, all of these things were foreign to me because I feel like I've never been exposed to it, I guess. It wasn't common. And everything that I did hear about it was negative. Like, I heard people that take medications are crazy, people that go to therapy are crazy, and so that's what I thought. So I told my doctor, I'm not crazy, I just am not feeling like myself. So it took me weeks and weeks to finally take the medication because I was just like, I don't know what it was. I think I was just scared. Just not knowing, in denial. So I started taking the medication a couple weeks after that because my husband kind of, he's really supportive in this, and he wants me, to be better and be the mom that he knows me to be for my kids. And that starts with me feeling better, like taking care of myself first. So I started taking the medication, and he was like, when you're ready, I think you should just go to the class, check it out. Like, you don't have to go through the whole thing right away. Just go and talk and see how you feel. So I went to my first day of therapy, and I was just like mute. I'm like, I don't know this person. Like, I'm nervous, I'm anxious, like, I don't want to be here, I don't need to be here, I'm fine. all of those feelings. And she suggested that after our whole session, she suggested that I see her in a group setting 3 times a week. And to me, that was too long. And that was like kind of excessive to me. I was like, do you think it's that serious for me to have to go 3 times a week? Like, that doesn't seem reasonable at all for me. And I don't think what I'm feeling is that serious. And she really cared. Like, you could tell that she really cared and was really concerned for me and my well-being and all that. So she was like, just try it out. Like, every step was like, just try it out and see how you like it. Like, just really baby steps. So I started going to therapy, and it's really been amazing. I feel like it saved my life. Sorry. It's kept me here for my husband and for my children. So I used to be ashamed to talk about it because there's this like negative stigma about therapy that only crazy people go to therapy. So just recognizing that I needed help and taking the necessary steps I needed to get that help and just being unapologetic about it. I don't feel so ashamed now because the more that I talk about it, the more women can relate to me. And I don't feel as alone as I used to. When I'm vulnerable with other people, they don't even have to like respond to me. I can just feel like some kind of connection, like me too. I know what you're going through. I understand what you're going through. And I shared a video on my Instagram about my postpartum journey that I felt that day. And since then, I actually took it down because I was getting so many responses.
Yeah, that's awesome.
And I felt really overwhelmed to where I was like,
you don't realize how many women are suffering until you open up about it.
And it's a lot to process when you get all that feedback.
Yeah.
It's like an emotional
I feel like it's
thing.
kind of like going through everything again.
yes.
When you receive those messages and stuff like that.
So it was really triggering for me.
Exactly.
And I didn't expect that amount of responses that I did get through, like, in my comments and in my DMs. I was like, should I have done that? Like, it made me feel better about myself because I was able to like let off what I was feeling that day. But I was like, how can I give what I don't have? Like, they're all reaching out to me to kind of get this sense of like comfort or like
when you're still going through it.
Yes, when I'm still going through it. So I told my husband, and I was like, I'm not a therapist. Like, what did I just do? And he's like, that just shows you that you are not alone in this, that there are women, Polynesian women, that feel the same way you do and don't know how to cope with it, or don't know where to start, or feel like their feelings are invalid because of this stigma of postpartum depression. And I know that the stigma around depression is that you're being dramatic or
being
weak, over emotional, being a woman, because women are emotional.
Right.
And that was really hard for me to get past, because I was raised by like strong women who toughed out every situation, who didn't need help from a medical professional, who confided in relatives. But relatives I don't know. It's like they tell you what you want to hear, and sometimes it's like
mental health is different.
Yes.
Like it's not a regular conversation to have or vent about, you know.
Yes.
You can only get so much from I mean, your loved ones that are there from you, but if people don't understand because they haven't experienced it, you can't get as much of what you need through them. And I feel like our culture expects, like, if you need to like talk about something and get your feelings out, you can do it with family. Like you should be close enough with them, almost is how they make it. Like you should be close enough to where you know you can come talk to me and I'll be there for you. But I think that's the difference between just going through something and going through having like a mental illness. It's different.
Yes. And like, for example, I told my mom, because my OB suggested that I tell somebody, just so that it's like on the radar, that, you know, people can kind of be aware. And she just treated me differently, like unintentionally, but I could tell that she didn't know how to help me, and she wanted to help me. And so what she did was, after I told her, she was like, well, are you okay? And I was like, no, I'm not okay, but I'm getting the help that I need to now. I'm taking medication, I'm going to therapy. And she was just quiet. And at that point, I kind of felt like something was wrong with me because I didn't feel that support from her. But after I told her, it was like a flood of calls every day just to see how I'm doing, check on me, what I'm doing, how I'm feeling every day. And if I didn't answer her calls, she was texting me. Where are you? Why aren't you answering my calls? And I'm like, Mom, I'm fine. Like, please stop treating me like there's something wrong with me. I felt very fragile. And I know that wasn't her intentions. She just didn't know what I needed until I told her, I just need you to love me like how you've been. I just need you to support me. I just need you to ask how I'm doing once in a while, not every day, every hour. I just need your support. I just need your strength, and I just need you to be there for me when I come to you. Because now that I know that you know, I know that I can come to you and just be like, I had a really good day at therapy, or I had a really bad day today, and this is what I'm doing to work through it, and this is what I'm feeling. Or if I don't feel like telling her, she can respect my boundaries with that and know that I'm okay, and trust that if I need help, I would reach out to her. And I think that's one other thing that I struggled with, was asking for help. And accepting help. So, yeah, I think with mental health, it's so foreign that people don't know how. They want to help you, but they don't know how to.
I love that you, I think it's great and important of what you just brought up and said in sharing that with your mom, and kind of like her response, even though it wasn't at all like negative, but how it automatically made you feel a sense of like being a failure. Because I think, and that would be great to even reach through this, even parents of new mothers, of mothers that go through it. I mean, not even new mothers that get it. There's ones that don't get it until later on, of like later down the road, later pregnancies. But I think it's a good awareness for everyone to see what it's like, and just the type of support that is helpful and all that's needed in supporting someone that's struggling with something like that. Because I feel like a lot of times as a parent, whether it's postpartum depression or depression, and like suicidal thoughts for the youth, I know automatically when a parent hears that, they automatically internalize it in making it about them, not in a selfish way, but they automatically think like, what did I do as a parent wrong?
Yeah.
That my kid would feel depressed or want to hurt themselves or have suicidal thoughts, or, you know, what could I have done as a parent to not have my child going to therapy or taking medication, when I think that's the issue right now when it comes to mental health, is that it's still portrayed that way. You know, I just think people are so used to it being a negative thing when it's a common thing. It's a regular thing. Like, mental illness doesn't have like a poster board child. Like, it doesn't look like this. It looks like everybody goes through something like that. Like, no one's exempt from it. And I think that's the hard thing. I mean, even obviously, like you said, that was a hard thing for you to have to accept, that you needed those types of help to get through what you were going through. But anyways, I just think that it was great that that was brought up to like shed light on that in like parents, and knowing that it, as hard as it may be, to not internalize it, to make it about them, and just remember what the issue is at hand, and just like you said, just keep treating me the way you were treating me, and just loving me in that way. And that's enough. Like, a lot of times it just takes saying it, so like your doctor said, so someone's aware, but not making the person feel any different, because for other people that can be like crucial. Like, I mean, you're older, but I can only imagine as a youth, like, I just know some of the young women, it made them almost spiral a little more with their parents' natural reactions. And I feel for their parents, because I can only imagine how hard that would be, you know, to know that one of your young, like, teenagers is experiencing that. But it almost just created more of a negative of them to feel like a burden, or like they are not good enough, things like that. So anyways, I just wanted to point that out, because I think that that's super important, and I love that that side of it was brought up for us to cover in this.
Yeah.
So.
And the same thing with my husband. Like, it was foreign to him as well. He didn't know.
I think it is foreign to, I think the Polynesian community and mental illnesses are so foreign. Even now, I think this generation is just kind of bringing more
light
to, and I'm so glad, because as our children grow, I'm grateful for my experiences, because I'm more aware of what they may experience. So
yeah,
for sure.
So I had to tell Sake too how he could help me, because the way he reacted is he just wouldn't say anything, because he was afraid that anything he said would trigger me, and I would have to like read minds. So that was so difficult to like try to communicate to him, like, you're in this with me too. Like, I'm sorry that you have to put up with this. But in his mind, it's like, this is what marriage is. Like, you go through these things together, and it's, mental health is a new thing to both of us, and we both have to work through it together. So having a really good support system when you are in those feelings, I feel like is really crucial. And for some people it's their family, and for some people it's not. But
having that communication too with who you do confide in letting them know, like, of what you just said, like, you had to tell him how he could help you. Because I think a lot of times we think, especially if it's a loved one, like they should know, like, I'm going to tell them, so they should know how to love me. But a lot of us, we forget that we love and show that love differently. And so I think being really transparent on, this is what I'm going through, and this is what would help me coming from you to do for me. I think that's something that a lot of us can forget to do, but I think that would make the big difference even for the other person to know, like, how they can, like, properly show up for you.
Yeah. I am still on this journey of recovery. Well, not fully recovery, because I don't feel like you fully recover from mental health. And I think that's another thing, is that we kind of think that there's a cure-all for this, like, oh, you take medication, you'll feel better, or oh, you're going to therapy, you'll feel better after therapy's done. But that's so not the case. Like, I feel like mental health is one of those long-term things that you are just gonna have to battle out, and you are gonna have really good days and a lot of bad days, but that doesn't mean that you just give up.
Mm-hmm.
Like, every day I feel like is a battle with mental health, and you have to choose what you're gonna do that day. If you're gonna choose to show up for yourself, or if you're gonna choose to let those demons take over you.
Mm-hmm.
And it's so not easy. It's like, it's so hard. And I think that's what I've learned about myself through this self-love journey, is that it's okay to feel those things, because those feelings are valid, and to just not be ashamed of every emotion that you're feeling, because you're not alone. And yeah, it's just an uphill battle, but it doesn't look like straight. It's like
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
all the way up, and
Yeah.
it keeps going, and you just think that it's never gonna end. But
I think with mental illnesses, it's something that we just learn to live with,
Mm-hmm.
and we learn how to cope.
mm-hmm.
And that's just something we live with forever, but we learn to
Mhm.
cope better, and as we continue on, then it's easier to deal with, but it's still there.
Yeah.
And so I totally feel for you. I remember so much, and I'm just so happy that you got help
Yeah.
early on. I'm so happy that you got help early on.
I feel like if it was later, I think this generation right now is like you said, bringing so much light to it, that I know that there are resources available.
Mhm.
Like, I don't think that my mom knew, maybe
Yeah,
she
I
did
can't even
know, but just
imagine.
didn't know how to access those resources.
I think it was so taboo and not spoken about, even though I think mental illness has always existed.
Yeah.
But I can't even imagine, like, I feel so much for all the generations before that struggled silently, just internally with it, you know, in feeling alone maybe their whole life about that, because they couldn't even, like, they didn't have social media back then to connect and hear others' stories the way that we are able to now, to know, like, okay, I'm not alone, someone's been through that. So I mean, I think it's awesome. That's why I feel like there can be so much, like, scary negativity to, like, the media these days. But I feel like the good outweighs the bad for me personally, because I just think that it can help a lot of people that don't know otherwise, like, where to turn or where to go if that's not, like, a normal conversation at home, you know?
Yeah. I don't even think they knew mental health was a thing.
Right.
My mom, when she was talking to me, she's like, I feel like maybe I had symptoms, but I don't know. And she's like, I just thought that's how all moms felt. So I just, like, fought through it, because I was like, well, I'm a mom now, so this is what it's like. Like, it's normal for me to feel these negative feelings. It's
Yeah.
normal for me, but it's not.
Oh, that's
Yeah.
sad. Yeah.
It's not normal. And that's what I thought too. And I could feel that it wasn't normal. I could feel that I wasn't myself, and I didn't want to feel that way.
Yeah.
Like, it's not a
Right.
good feeling. And to do that to yourself, like, that's, like, not self-love at all. To, like, put yourself through that pain and feel like you have to fight through it by yourself is like, it's really taxing. It's
yeah,
exhausting.
and, like, a toxic relationship to have with yourself.
Yeah.
Yes, I was. My journey is really different from yours. I stuck it out. I didn't want to help. I've always been that way. I can do it. I don't need help. And I didn't come to even know what postpartum depression was until my fourth child. So, or my fifth, it was my fifth child. My four first pregnancies, they were okay. And is it okay if I get into my self-love? Okay.
Yeah.
So my experience through my journey through self-love, I had experienced depression early on. And when I sat and thought about when did I first come to know self-love, it's not that I didn't ever, I always liked myself, but I think that growing up biracial, it really affected feeling like I belonged. And being an active in the church growing up, I didn't feel like we had that firm foundation, and it affected me a lot in just not knowing who I was. And so I struggled with that for a long time, and I didn't really come to love myself until after my fourth child, where I came to like, wow, just really recognize who I was as a person, and just that I'm a pretty cool person. Like, wow, like Tina, you have so many things going for you. And it took me a long time to recognize that. Not to say that I didn't like myself and I wasn't happy with who I was, but I didn't really feel self-love until then. And it was through fitness that I came to like recognize, and just a really good group of friends that we just became really close, and we went to the temple together, and we pushed each other spiritually and physically, and it kind of just pushed our boundaries where we could come to see the gifts that we possess. And it was through this journey that I was like, okay, we're gonna, me and my husband had talked about having another baby, and my daughter at the time was 4, my youngest at the time was 4, and we got pregnant, and I was so sure that this was gonna be, I'm going to have a really great pregnancy, and I'm going to put all of my knowledge and everything into this. So when I come back, it's going to be great. And I can use this to possibly, I had goals to like become a physical trainer and things like that, and utilize those, the knowledge and stuff and experience that I had gained. And then I had my daughter, and the timing was just so good because my husband was working on the road. He worked on the road for 13 years throughout our marriage.
Wow.
And so thankfully he was able to come home right before I delivered, and he was home for the delivery. And I was just grateful. You know, there's no reason for me to be upset. Your husband's home, you have everything that you need. And I remember about 3 weeks after I had given birth, my sister came over to visit me. And I had mentioned to her that I wasn't feeling myself. She said, "Are you okay?" And I had some conversations with her, even recently, where she was like, "I had no idea that you were suffering the way that you were." And I told her that I didn't feel myself, and when I think back, hearing how it's been 3 months, and you're feeling yourself already. It took me about 13 months that I just kind of pushed. And my husband would call home, and I would be sobbing on the phone, like, I don't know what's wrong with me. I remember mentioning it to friends. I have a really close friend that I'm so grateful for her. She's been there throughout the whole journey, but she was kind of going through it with me. And everything was, I could just tell her, my anxiety was so bad. I would wake up with a really, really bad anxiety that would just make me sick to my stomach. And severe migraines, and I'm just putting myself through this because I feel like when you're in it, and you have children, and you have to deal with this. This is what I'm thinking. This is something that you just, it's okay, just continue to push through. It's going to come to an end. But it was such a dark feeling when my husband would call, and I'd say hello, and he's like, what are you doing? And I just sob, and he's like, what's wrong? And I'm like, I don't know what's wrong. And I found, before I had gotten pregnant, movement has always been therapy for me. And so I figured, you know what, I just need to get out and move. There were times that I would go to the gym and just put on a hoodie and just sweat and just cry when I'm on the machines. And then I'd go home and I'd feel better. And for a long time, that was my therapy. And then I got to the point where the gym was too much for me. And so I would just move at home. And that was my form of coping. And a big reason that I didn't turn to prescription medication, not to say that they're such a blessing for, and especially in your situation, but a very close, someone in my life was very, very close to me. I've seen the negative effects of prescriptions, and I knew that I didn't want to take that route just because I've seen how detrimental it can be. And so I was always seeking movement, oils, crystals, anything, any way that I could find the power within to just heal me of this heaviness and this dark feeling that I was feeling for such a long time. And just like Candace had mentioned, it comes in waves. There were days that I would feel so heavy and dark, and there were days that I felt like, you know, this is going to be a good day. I spoke with my husband about just how that whole experience had affected him and how he worried at work that he was going to receive a call that I had hurt myself or that I had hurt my children. And there were times that he had to stop me from hurting myself. So many days where I just didn't feel like there was no purpose. I didn't have any purpose. And here I am with 5 children. How blessed I am to have 5 children. But when you are experiencing those emotions and you're feeling it, and I told him it was never my intention to make him feel that, you know, when you're in it and someone, you know, I feel for those who commit suicide because, and I like my friend, she said, you know, we're survivors. You know, we survived. There are so many who don't. And when you're in it, when you're in it and you're not thinking about everyone, you know, and here I am with 5 children and I can't, it's so blurred and so clouded that I can't even see how it would affect any of them if I followed through with those things. So I think it's so important for people to have more understanding, or just to be more understanding of those who are suffering or having a bad day, that they don't see everyone who's reaching in to help them. It's so clouded at the time when you're experiencing the depression that you don't see or even feel. You don't feel a lot of times. I wasn't feeling. I just felt really, it was just dark. It's really dark and clouded. And I had, you know, we are so blessed, but it's hard to see those things when you're dealing with those hormones and everything else. And this went on for 13 months where I felt the heaviness lifted. And I think that's when it was through that experience that I came to recognize and just be more grateful for the experience. It was such a hard, reflecting on it, it's so hard, but I'm so grateful for it because it's really helped me and molded me to who I am, just to be more grateful for everything that I am, to be more kind to myself, to be more kind to others, to try and be more understanding of other people and their experiences, but to also allow myself to, I think more than anything, I was really always hard on myself. And I think that it's just allowing myself to be who I am unapologetically, I think that that's what's really helped me to evolve into who I am. And have more appreciation for everything. I think one really important conversation is that we don't really recognize or realize how these things affect our loved ones. And that's something that I was able to have a conversation with my husband about, and how it's been, my daughter's 3 now, so it's been a little while. That's not to say that I still have really severe anxiety, and I've learned to cope with it more. I know my triggers. I know what to avoid. I know to set boundaries.
Mm-hmm.
And, but when I had spoke with him about it, I think we had worked our way through it. So it wasn't a conversation that we had about, we just knew that we got through it, and we feel better now. We feel okay. And so I asked him, and he had said that he worried so much, that he was going to receive a call that I had hurt myself, or that I hurt my kids. And there were times and I feel so bad about it now, but he was my target. Whenever I lashed out and I felt angry, I didn't understand what's going on inside, he was always the target. And I feel there were several nights when he was home, because he left after a few months back on the road when I was still kind of in it. But when he was home, he would always kneel at our bed, and I would just lay in bed, and it was through his persistent prayers at the foot of our bed and scripture. He would read a few scriptures to me before he left to work. And it was through his persistence and consistency in doing that it held us together. Because it's so hard on your marriage. It's so hard on your children. And having made it through, it's so much easier to communicate because he's aware. It's an open conversation in our home. We talk about anxieties and depression. My oldest is 14. And so I feel like there's such important conversations to have. And we talk about them often, and how you're feeling, or the energies you're putting out, the energies you're allowing around you, and how important it is, because it can really affect your mood. And I totally get it though with this, just the Polynesians and how we don't address mental illnesses. I wouldn't say just recently, but my grandma struggles from anxiety too as well. And that's something that we came to know.
So you were saying about, did you say your grandma?
Oh yeah, so my grandma, I think through just finding that so many of us struggle with anxiety, my grandma has anxiety as well, and she's, it's just crazy to see more that these illnesses are coming to light so much more now. But it's good that we're more aware. She's older. I think she's almost 90, but she's still, even now, she still struggles with anxiety. And that's a conversation I had with my good friend, that this is something that we just have to learn to live with. And
I like what you said about like being grateful that you've gone through this, because I didn't think of it that way, but like I'm grateful that I am aware of depression and anxiety. That way, if it was to ever come up within my children, I could recognize that. And like you said, have those conversations with them. I think that's super important to pass that down to the generations and the youth especially. I feel like they're just living in a really hard time.
They are.
And
Yeah.
I feel for them. Like, for me to go through it as a mom, I can't even imagine. I was like, I don't remember feeling that way as a youth.
Mm-hmm.
And for them to be going through that now is...
Yeah.
It's hard.
It's hard.
Yeah.
I think it's almost like people that don't understand it, that it's a foreign thing like depression and stuff. I think to feel that way, you obviously haven't had it affect or hit home, because I feel like whether you understand it or not, I get that you can have your initial reaction. But after just continuing to see your loved ones suffer, I feel like you can't help but have it soften your heart to try to understand more where they're coming from. But I think, and for someone that might be watching that can't relate or understand, depression is not the sadness you feel when you watch a sad movie or just a normal, natural, sad feeling you have. Like you brought up, it's a hormone imbalance. Like it's a chemical imbalance inside of your body that makes it, like you said, to where, and I think that's even great that you brought that up about suicide, like the stigma in the selfishness behind suicide. But with what you said, and I've never heard that before, so it's good for me to hear, that it is so clouded for that person in that moment, which makes sense, because it's like if someone is taking it to that extent, like that they are willing to hurt themselves to that extent to take their life, like their mind and their thinking logic is so clouded and dark, they aren't able to see or realize or process anything else around them. And so I love that you brought that up, because it is like, it's such an eerie thing to hear, but it's a reality, and that's what people that struggle with depression feel. So I like that you brought that up, because I think people need to know that haven't personally experienced it yet or don't understand it, to know that it's more than just sadness. That's why it's depression, and it's like a actual, like it's mental illness. It's an illness. Like it's more than what they think that you could just get over and move past. So I just wanted to point that out, because I love that, and I thought that was important. So, was there anything else that you had?
I can't think of anything else.
You're fine. So do you feel like, I mean, and maybe yours was already said, of your current, like of pick-me-ups, of when you are really struggling, like when you were in those moments, maybe thinking back to yours or Candace, when you get those days where it's the lows, you know, like you guys said, it comes in waves. What would be something that you felt, even if it was in the smallest way, that helped you to try and keep pushing? Like I was almost thinking while you guys were talking, obviously it's kind of limited, because I feel like a lot of things you maybe try, you're still in the thickness of that like darkness. But it just made me think of like, it kind of just seems like all you could do is focus on one task at a time that day, and day by day. Like you can't overwhelm yourself of thinking of anything in the future than the now and what's happening, and just doing the one thing that leads to the next, and then have it get you through your day. That's all that came to my mind, obviously, because I haven't struggled. But
I think an instant pick-me-up, I'm really simple. I like to go take little drives by myself and just, I speak out loud to Heavenly Father like He's sitting with me. That's one of my favorite things to do. Instant pick-me-up. I think that sometimes when we have those triggers of anxiety, it's mindfulness and just being aware of our surroundings, and reminding ourselves that our thoughts are, I think I don't even know how to explain it. Instant pick-me-up. I think mindfulness is so important. But another instant pick-me-up, I'm super simple. I don't have like, I love to move. I love to go outside and just take walks. I love the sunshine. But I think just being really mindful And,
Yeah.
just telling yourself that this is what's going on and your thoughts are not reality is important too.
Yeah. I love that.
I like that you said mindfulness. I don't have an instant pick me up because I'm still learning how
I
to
feel
cope
for
through
you.
this thing. So some days, I mean, they're different. Some days it's talking to my husband because now that he knows, he can kind of empathize with me. And I think a lot of people that go through empathy, go through mental health, all they need is empathy. They don't need you to feel sorry for them. They don't need you to treat them any different. Like I said before, they just need you to empathize with them and love them. And some days it's a Diet Coke and a chocolate chip cookie. And some days I need to call my therapist.
Yeah.
And
That's so good.
And have her bring me back from that dark place.
Yeah.
And like I said, it's just so constant and it sucks. It's really hard, and I'm sorry to anyone that has to deal with that, because it's a different beast that you just have to kind of cope with on your own, however you cope with it. And finding that is so hard.
It is. It takes time.
Like trial and error.
But I think that's what matters, is that you try. Like trial and error, you can only do that through trying something, and then you see, okay, this isn't working, it's not helping me, so then what's something else I can do? I think realizing that you are worth the effort and you're worth being here for yourself, because you can contribute to this world and your family needs you and they deserve to have you here. So it's worth going through that trial and error process to see what's going to pick you up little by little each day to get through it.
Totally.
So that ties into like kind of our closing question, is just if you guys can think of and share, if you could give advice to someone, a mother currently struggling with postpartum depression and postpartum anxiety, and also to maybe to first give your advice to their spouse, and then your advice to the woman that is going through it right now.
Advice to their spouse, I would say, is to just be open and honest. And I mean, your spouse fell in love with you for a reason, and you share everything, the ups, the downs, and you go through that together, and you kind of need that support system from that person. For the spouse, it would be to be open-minded, to take it all in, be patient. And I really had to tell Saki to be open-minded to the whole thing and to not form an opinion like right then and there. Or form a solution right then and there. It's just to kind of try to understand and be open-minded about the whole thing.
What about yours for a spouse?
I agree with Candace. I think patience is so important. And I know that it's hard. It's not always easy. These situations, they require so much patience, understanding, compassion. I can say so many things. It's such a rocky time. Love, open-mindedness. There's so many different things, but I think above all, it just requires compassion and patience more than anything else. Understanding.
Yeah. And what would be yours to the woman?
I worry so much for moms who are new. To get help. I think from Candace and hearing how quickly she was able to get help, I think it would have changed my experience a lot had I gone and got medication. Definitely get help. I would say talk to someone about it. Thankfully, I have my dear friend who was kind of like my therapist. She's helped me a lot through everything. And make time for yourself, and I think we're so hard on ourselves. I remember there was coming up from that deep dark hole. I was so disgusted with myself for a long time that I threw away a lot of my clothes. I know that it's hard when you're in those moments, but to really love yourself, that you are so special, and there are little people who need you here. There's so many people who need you here, that you're special. I think getting help and making time to heal, seeking those answers to heal, and seeing what works for you. What's an instant pick-me-up? What can you do to help yourself today? Focus or take it one day at a time. I think that's what's so important too, is not thinking so much about the future, but just taking it one day at a time. I think that's so important.
Awesome. What about you, Candace?
So much advice. I think what I wish someone would have told me is that my feelings are valid.
Yes.
That what you're feeling is valid, whether you're feeling sad, happy, depressed, anxious. You may feel like you're being dramatic, or you may feel like you're overcomplicating things, or you're just being dramatic. Like, those are valid feelings, and it's not anything to ignore or just accept. Like, I feel like as women, me myself, I accepted a lot of things. Like, I accepted that I'm just a dramatic person, and that's why this is happening to me. And I needed other people to like validate those feelings for me. Like, you're not being dramatic. I needed that. And I feel like it's natural to feel those things and to just embrace those feelings and accept it for what it is. And it's hard. Being a woman is hard. Being a mom is hard. It's hard for the fit mom. It's hard for the Instagram mom. It's hard for the twin mom. It's hard for a singleton mom. It's hard for the mom in waiting.
Yeah.
It's hard. And we just need to show up for ourselves. So
I love that. That's inspired of what you just said. I feel like both of them, because that was going to be my call to action to end this episode. I feel for those that are watching, the call to action of what was discussed today is to find the way that you're going to show up for yourself this week, and what you're going to commit to doing, the harder thing that you've been putting off, but you know you need to do to put yourself first. And start with an affirmation of telling yourself, like of what you said. I think just reciting to yourself when you're alone and saying it out loud, like, my feelings are valid and I deserve to be happy. I think saying that, and then commit to making one hard step towards feeling better, whether that is with trying to get therapy or medication to help you with your depression, whether that is leaving a relationship that has been toxic and hasn't served you and doesn't make you feel valued or healthy, whether that is getting help if you have an eating disorder. Everyone is going through something different, but I think that everyone can relate to that same principle of reminding yourself, my feelings are valid, I deserve to be happy, and then just committing to yourself to make the one step. It's going to be the harder step, but that'll be your self-love action of the week. Sometimes it's those harder things that we have to do, that we are showing ourselves that we put ourselves first and that we're going to take care of ourselves and we're there for ourselves and we're our ride or die, you know, that we are going to show up for her like in the mirror and let her know that she deserves to be happy. So I don't know if you guys would agree to have that be the call to action. And hopefully this helps somebody that is watching, and just know, hopefully you felt our hearts and our loves in this episode. Thank you so much, Tina and Candace. I know it's a very scary thing to be vulnerable about something so serious, and that still does have such a big stigma when it comes to that conversation. But I definitely know this is part of the work that needs to be done to help open up doors and hearts to the conversation, to help people heal and be seen. So again, thank you so much. You're both amazing and you're doing a good job. And I love you both. Thank you all for watching, and subscribe if you're not following already, and let us know if there is anything that helps you or has helped you through what you've gone through, as you sharing can be an answer to somebody else's prayers and what they're looking for. And we'll see you next week.